Welcome to this explainer. Economics isn't just a bunch of abstract numbers flashing on a screen. Far from it. It's actually the fundamental study of human decision-making. So today, we're flipping open the ledger to demystify the core principles of how we navigate our daily choices. Let's dive right in.
I want to start with a question. Think about all the things you want right now. The big stuff, the small stuff. Why can't we just have it all? Well, it's because we live in a reality completely defined by scarcity. And honestly, that's the starting point of our entire journey today. How on earth do we allocate what little we have to satisfy our endless, unlimited desires?
Section 1. Managing the human household. Let's look at the foundations of individual choice.
To really get this, it helps to ground this massive, global social science in something you can literally touch and feel. The word economics actually comes from the Greek word oikonomia, which simply means managing a household. So whether you're balancing a giant national budget or just mapping out your weekly groceries on a piece of scrap paper, you are practicing economics.
Here's the core problem sketched out for us. Every single society on Earth has limited resources, right? We're talking capital, labor, raw materials. But we have absolutely unlimited wants. And this tension forces everyone, from just regular individuals to massive private equity firms, to make really tough allocation decisions. It's this constant balancing act between efficiency and equality, which means at the end of the day, everyone faces trade-offs.
Let's look at a real-world example that brilliantly illustrates what we call opportunity cost. Back in 2024, Reliance faced a major choice. They could do a huge capital reinvestment in energy transition projects, or they could pay out maximum dividends to their shareholders. Now, the true cost of choosing that energy transition isn't just the actual money spent. No, the real cost is the foregone 4 to 5% dividend yield that the shareholders gave up. Because in economics, choosing one thing always means giving up another. But, decisions in the real world are rarely just black and white. They're actually made at the margin through tiny, incremental changes. Imagine an airline flight. Let's say it costs exactly 1 million rupees to run, and the plane has 200 seats. Simple math, the average cost is 5,000 rupees a seat. But what if passengers can only afford 3,000 rupees? If you stick stubbornly to that 5,000 rupee average, you're going to fly empty. Instead, if you divide the cabin into two classes, you can capture that affordable 3,000 rupee fare. Why? Because securing any incremental rupee, that marginal profit, is infinitely better than leaving a seat totally empty. That right there is marginal analysis in action.
Moving on to Section 2, the invisible hand. Let's explore exactly how the marketplace operates.
Listen to this classic, absolute game changer of an idea from Adam Smith. He basically said that individuals pursuing their own self-interest can unintentionally promote the broader public interest and the overall economic well-being of society. We call this the invisible hand theory. It means that buyers and sellers, just interacting naturally, can produce highly efficient outcomes. And get this, they do it with zero need for a giant central planner telling everyone what to do. Pretty wild, right?
So the crucial takeaway here is that prices aren't just random numbers pulled out of a hat. They are incredibly powerful signals determined by where supply and demand intersect. Take the projected 2026 U.S.-Iran crude crisis as an example. When the price of crude hits, say, $100 a barrel, that price is a massive signal screaming to the entire world, hey, scarcity exists. Automatically, like turning a giant mechanical gear, this creates a market incentive. Producers realize, wow, we can make more money, so they pump more oil. Consumers feel the pinch at the pump, so they drive less. The market naturally adjusts and allocates resources optimally, all based on that single price signal.
And this natural coordination leads us perfectly into voluntary trade. Now, trade gets a bad rap sometimes, but it can actually make everyone better off. It is absolutely not a zero-sum game where if I win, you have to lose. If a business, or even a whole country, excels at one specific branch of production, they should just specialize in it. By specializing in what they do best and exchanging those goods with others, total global production increases. Both parties literally walk away wealthier.
Okay, but let's be real. Markets aren't always perfect. Sometimes things break down and we get a market failure. A classic example? Air pollution. The problem is, nobody is naturally forced to pay for clean air. This is exactly where governments need to step in to fix the glitch. For instance, by introducing a 400 rupee per ton coal cess in 2024, India basically forced polluters to internalize that environmental cost. It's a way of pushing the market toward cleaner production when the invisible hand kind of drops the ball.
Section 3. The macro machine. We're zooming out from the individual to look at society as a whole.
When we look at an entire country, its standard of living depends almost completely on its ability to actually produce goods and services. Let's compare some numbers from 2024. India's GDP per capita was $2,400, while Bangladesh was at $2,100. Why the gap? The data clearly points to India having higher tech productivity, a massive IT sector, and much better capital infrastructure. The big lesson here? Long-term prosperity doesn't come from government mandates or arbitrary price controls. It comes from productivity, literally, how much output you can squeeze out of a single hour of work. Societies absolutely have to focus on productivity, not just moving money around.
Now I want you to take a hard look at this number, greater than 80%. That is the sheer danger of printing too much money. This was the monthly inflation rate in Zimbabwe back in 2008. When a government just prints cash and increases the money supply way faster than their real output grows, you end up with a flood of money chasing the exact same amount of stuff. The result? Prices literally skyrocketed week over week until their entire currency became completely worthless.
And because inflation is so dangerous, society faces a pretty brutal short-run trade-off, which economists have mapped out on something called the Phillips curve. It's a real balancing act. You can stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates to create more jobs, sure, but you're going to trigger higher inflation. On the flip side, you can tighten the money supply to keep prices perfectly stable, but you'll end up with fewer jobs. In the 2024-25 fiscal year, the Reserve Bank of India had to make this exact agonizing choice. They opted for a balanced approach, targeting 5.5% inflation. They consciously traded away some job growth just to maintain price stability. It all goes back to our very first rule: there is absolutely no free lunch.
Section 4. The Economist's Toolkit. Let's see how we go about mapping human behavior.
First things first, we have to divide our toolkit into two main compartments. You've got microeconomics, which is the study of the small scale, how individual households and firms interact within very specific markets, and then you have macroeconomics. That's the big picture. When we start talking about economy-wide changes like national unemployment, massive inflation spikes, or overall economic growth, we are looking strictly through that macro lens.
Another crucial tool, knowing how to separate hard facts from personal feelings. A positive statement is a claim that can literally be tested. It is factually true or it's factually false. End of story. But a normative statement, that is an expression of an opinion. It's how someone feels the world ought to be. This quick distinction is just so vital because it helps us untangle testable, concrete economic realities from messy personal political views.
Now, let's look at the circular flow diagram. Think of this like a giant turning mechanical gear that explains the continuous flow of money through the economy. On one side, households buy goods and services from firms. But wait, where do the households get that money in the first place? Well, the gear turns, and those same firms buy the factors of production, like say your daily labor, directly back from the households. It's this endless, completely fascinating cycle of rupees just constantly changing hands.
Okay, let's map this out with the Production Possibilities Frontier, or the PPF. Picture a curve drawn on a page. This curve visualizes the absolute maximum amount of two different products a company can produce using its limited resources. If you are operating directly on that curve, say making 1,000 units of product B and 0 of product A, you are perfectly 100% efficient. But if your production falls anywhere inside that curve, you're inefficient. You're leaving money on the table and you literally have resources just sitting idle.
And the actual shape of this boundary tells a really cool story. If the inputs you're using are perfectly similar or homogeneous, you get a linear PPF, just a straight line across the page. The opportunity cost stays exactly constant. But in reality, writing software requires a very different skill set than, say, farming wheat. That mismatch gives us a nonlinear, beautifully bowed-out curve. It perfectly represents shifting opportunity costs as you awkwardly force resources into fields they just aren't naturally suited for.
But here is easily the most exciting part. That frontier curve isn't a prison. An outward shift happens the moment a business implements new technological advancements. Suddenly, bam, economic growth happens. Capacity increases. A society that previously maxed out at 1,000 units of product B can suddenly produce 1,400. Human innovation literally grabs the boundaries of scarcity and redraws them further out on the page.
So, we've journeyed all the way from the tactile basics of managing a single household right up to the massive macroeconomic frontiers of technological growth.
We've seen that every single choice carries a cost. We've learned that markets can coordinate almost magically when left alone, even if they occasionally need a nudge. And we've seen that productivity is the ultimate, undeniable engine of prosperity. So, knowing that you live in a world defined by limited resources and totally unlimited wants, what is your next trade-off going to be?